dare you? You don't belong here! Get away from him! This is betrayal!
They say the crown never chooses love, only power. But when King Obinna died, everyone expected his oldest son to rule. Then the Dibia spoke a name that shocked the palace, Ngozi. The wife they mocked, the one they exiled, held the kingdom's destiny in her hands. Subscribe now for more stories of betrayal, love, and destiny, because this is the crown that divided 5 hearts. The kingdom of Umuagu was a land that seemed to touch the sky. Its red earth stretched far and wide, glowing under the morning sun like molten clay. The roads were lined with ancient Iroko trees, their roots deep, their branches heavy with history. Villagers whispered that the trees had seen centuries pass, had heard the laughter and tears of generations, and had felt the pulse of the kingdom itself. In the heart of Umuagu stood the palace. Tall and grand, its walls were carved with symbols of past kings, of battles won, and of wisdom earned. The air was always filled with the distant sound of royal drums, echoing from the court, calling the people to respect, to obedience, to awe. Smoke rose from the ancestral shrines, carrying the prayers of mothers, fathers, and children. The smell of kola nuts and burning incense mingled with the earth, sweet and heavy. And in that palace, on a throne carved from the oldest Iroko, sat Ezobina Okafor, the king. Men bowed when he entered a room. Warriors stood still when he passed. Traders, nobles, and strangers alike trembled at his presence. His voice could command silence, and his gaze could make the proudest chief lower his head. Everyone in Umuagu respected him. Everyone feared him. Everyone admired him. But not a single person knew the truth that hid behind his eyes. He was lonely. In the morning, he would sit alone in the grand hall, his hands folded, staring at the empty courtyard. "It is my crown, my kingdom," he would whisper to no one, "yet who shares my laughter, who hears my heart?" Even the drums, loud and proud, could not fill the emptiness inside him. The voices of his people, shouting, cheering, offering gifts and praise, all faded like echoes in a cave. He felt their admiration, yes, but he did not feel warmth. One day, a young attendant approached. "My king," he said, bowing low, "the elders wait. They bring news from the villages. They speak of alliances, of trade, of marriages." Ezobina waved his hand, a tired smile on his lips. "Let them wait," he said softly. "Tell me first, has anyone told the trees of Umuagu that their king is lonely? Have the ancestors spoken to me today?" The boy hesitated, unsure how to answer. "The ancestors, they watch my king. They hear your prayers." Ezobina leaned back, resting his head against the carved throne. "Yes, they hear, but hearing is not the same as answering. I am a king with a crown, yet no companion to share the weight." The boy bowed again and left, leaving the king alone with the sound of the drums and the whispering wind through the Iroko leaves. The palace was full of life, yet it was silent to him. The red earth outside, the ancestral shrines, even the smoke rising from the incense, they all felt distant. The king of Umuagu ruled all he could see, but he could not rule the loneliness in his chest, and so he sat, day after day, admired, feared, respected, and alone. If you want, I can continue the next scene where the king decides to take wives to secure alliances, keeping the same rich, emotional, narratable style for YouTube AI narration. Do you want me to do that next? In the kingdom of Umuagu, a king's duty was never only to rule. It was to protect, to expand, and to secure peace among villages that surrounded the land. And in Umuagu, peace often came through marriage. Ezobina Okafor, wise and proud, knew this well. He did not marry for love. His heart, though lonely, could not decide the fate of villages or the prosperity of his kingdom. Instead, his marriages were threads in a vast tapestry of power. Each wife would bring with her a village's loyalty, wealth, and strength. The first wife came from a village of warriors. Her father was a general, a man whose name struck fear in the hearts of her enemies. She entered the palace with her posture straight, her eyes sharp. "My king," she said, bowing, "I am yours and my people stand with you." The king nodded, knowing her presence meant a strong army ready to defend the crown. The second wife was the daughter of wealthy traders. She brought with her the riches of her father's market, ivory, spices, and fine cloth. When she spoke, her voice was smooth, persuasive, and careful. "My king, your tables will never be empty, your treasury never bare," she promised. Her wealth meant the kingdom could prosper, trade could flourish, and allies would smile upon Umuagu. The third wife came from a family of spiritual leaders. Her rival carried incense and whispers of prayers. She was quiet, eyes deep as the night, speaking only when necessary. "Your ancestors guide me to you, my king. Through me, their wisdom will protect this palace," she said. She carried the blessings and the fear of the unseen world, a power that even warriors could not challenge. The fourth wife came from a family of titled men, men who had served the kingdom for generations and whose words shaped decisions. She entered with dignity, her head high. "My king, my family's counsel is yours," she said, bowing low. She brought respect, influence, and connections within the kingdom's councils. Ezobina looked at each of them and felt nothing but duty. There was no spark of love in his eyes. Each wife was a pillar, holding part of the kingdom in her hands. And yet, he wondered silently, as he watched them bow, smile, and speak, whether any of them could ever reach his heart. Later, he spoke softly to his chief advisor. "These marriages, they are threads in a web," he said, his voice almost lost in the palace wind. "Warriors, wealth, wisdom, respect, I take them to bind the kingdom, not to bind my heart." The advisor nodded, understanding the truth the king did not say aloud. "Your Majesty, the kingdom will be stronger, safer. That is your duty. Love can come later, if it chooses to." Ezobina did not answer. He looked out across the courtyard, at the red earth and the ancient Iroko trees, and wondered if love would ever choose him at all. Because in Umuagu, marriage was not about hearts, it was about power, and the king knew that a crown could demand everything, except mercy for loneliness. The palace of Umuagu did not become noisy all at once. It changed slowly, like a calm river turning dangerous without warning. At first, the four wives lived side by side in polite silence. Their greetings were respectful, their smiles were measured, but beneath every greeting, beneath every smile, ambition breathed quietly. Each wife knew why she was there. None of them came empty-handed. Each carried the weight of a powerful village behind her back, and with that weight came expectation. The first wife, the daughter of warriors, believed the palace belonged to her by right. She had arrived first. Her marriage had been announced with drums and gunshots. When she walked through the courtyard, servants moved quickly. "Make way," they whispered. "She is the senior wife." She reminded them often. "I was here before you," she would say calmly, but her eyes were sharp. "Do not forget your place." The second wife competed with beauty and gifts. She sent baskets of gold, fine cloth, and kola nuts to the king's chambers. "This is from my father's market," she would say softly, smiling. "May my king remember where abundance comes from." She counted every visit the king made to her room and every gift he returned. The third wife used silence and prayer. She burned incense in the shrines, spoke to the Dibia, and whispered to servants about the ancestors' will. Power is not always seen, she said quietly. Some of us carry the voice of the spirits. People listened. Fear gave her influence. The fourth wife watched them all. She spoke often in the council halls, reminding elders of her family's long service to the throne. Respect has a history, she would say. And my family wrote much of it. Her words carried weight, and she knew it. Soon, the palace felt crowded, not with bodies, but with intention. Servants became messengers. Laughter became competition. Even meals turned into quiet battles. The king enjoyed my soup today. One wife would say. Another would reply, smiling, yes. But he stayed longer in my chambers. Then came the children. When the first wife gave birth to a son, she lifted her head proudly. The heir has arrived, she declared. Drums sounded. Warriors celebrated. She walked through the palace with confidence. A son, she said, and the first. The second wife followed with her own child. The third and fourth soon after. Each birth deepened the rivalry. Each child became proof of relevance, proof of power. They gathered sometimes in the women's courtyard, pretending to share laughter. Our children will grow together, one said. Another replied, yes, but only one can sit on the throne. Silence would follow, smiles would freeze, in quiet corners. Whispers grew louder. Seniority matters, the first wife would say. The crown respects order. Others nodded, even when doubt crept in. They told themselves the same story again and again. Seniority equals power. Seniority equals favor. Seniority equals destiny. They believed it with all their hearts. And as ambition filled every corridor of the palace, none of them noticed the truth slowly forming, that power was watching them, and it was not impressed. The decision came quietly, without drums, without gunshots, without the usual excitement that followed royal marriages in Umuagu. One morning, as the sun rose gently over the red earth, Ezobina Okafor called for the elders. His voice was calm, almost casual. Yet the weight of his words would soon shake the palace. I will take another wife, the king said. The elders exchanged glances. Another wife, they were confused, but they nodded respectfully. One of them cleared his throat. My king, he said carefully. From which village will this alliance come? Which land seeks peace or favor? The king did not answer immediately. He looked past them, toward the ancient Iroko trees standing quietly in the distance. This marriage, he said at last, is not for alliance. The room fell silent. The elders shifted on their stools. Another elder leaned forward. Not for alliance, he repeated. Then what pressure has come upon the throne? What enemy do we answer? Ezobina shook his head slowly. There is no pressure, he said. And no enemy. That answer troubled them more than war would have. Later that day, the palace gates opened, not to a procession of chiefs and warriors, but to a small group of villagers. At their center walked a young woman. Her wrapper was simple. Her steps were modest. Her eyes were calm. This was Ngozi. From a humble village known more for honesty than power. No royal drums announced her arrival. No gunshots echoed. Only the soft sound of her feet against the red earth followed her into the palace. Servants whispered as she passed. Is this the new wife? One asked. Another frowned. Where are her gifts? Where are her people? Inside the council hall. The elders watched her closely. One of them leaned toward another and whispered, She carries no village behind her. Another replied, then why would the king choose her? Ngozi knelt before the king, her head bowed. My king, she said softly, I come with respect. Ezobina looked at her for a long moment. There was no hunger in his eyes, no ambition in hers. Only quiet understanding passed between them. He nodded once. Rise, he said. When the elders finally found their voices, questions poured out. My king, one said, what strength does her village offer? Another added, what alliance does this marriage secure? The king's answer was simple, none. The elders were stunned. One of them spoke again, struggling to remain calm. Then why this marriage? Ezobina's voice softened. Because not. Every bond is forged by fear or need. No one understood him. The elders left the hall troubled. The palace buzzed with confusion. The four wives watched from a distance, their faces tight with disbelief. No celebration, one whispered. No gifts, another scoffed. She must be temporary. But as Ngozi was led quietly into the palace, without noise, without pride, without expectation, something unseen settled into Yumuagu. A marriage had been made, not of power, not of pressure, but of choice. Ngozi did not enter the palace like a queen. She entered like a guest who did not want to disturb the air. Her voice was soft, so soft that people leaned closer when she spoke. When she greeted the elders, she knelt properly, her head bowed low. My fathers, she would say gently, may your days be long. The elders noticed. Some nodded in approval. Others watched her with curiosity, unsure what to make of such quietness in a palace filled with ambition. She never raised her voice, even when spoken to sharply. When one of the senior wives questioned her place, Ngozi only replied, I am learning, and stepped aside. She did not argue. She did not defend herself. Her calm unsettled those who expected resistance. Ngozi respected the elders deeply. Whenever they gathered in the courtyard, she brought water without being asked. She listened when they spoke, never interrupting, never correcting. One elder whispered to another, this one carries old manners. The other replied, yes. She behaves like the women of the past, with the servants. She was no different. She greeted them by name. She helped grind pepper, sweep the courtyard, and carry water. When a young maid protested, saying, my lady, this is not your work, Ngozi smiled and answered, work does not shame anyone. The servants began to protect her without being told. They spoke well of her in corners where gossip usually grew. But Ngozi did not join gossip. When the other wives gathered to speak in low voices, she kept her distance. When insults floated through the air, she pretended not to hear. If someone tried to draw her in, she would say quietly, words can wound even when spoken softly, and walk away. The king noticed everything. He noticed how the palace grew calmer wherever Ngozi stood. He noticed how his mind felt lighter after speaking with her. One evening, he sat with her under the moonlight. You do not compete, he said thoughtfully. Why? Ngozi lowered her eyes. My king. She replied. Peace does not shout. Those words stayed with him. He began to visit her hut more often. He spoke to her about the weight of the crown, about the noise of the palace, about the loneliness he carried. She listened without interrupting. Sometimes she said nothing at all. Yet he felt understood. In her presence, the king slept better. He laughed softly. He removed his crown and forgot he was a ruler, if only for a moment. Love did not arrive loudly. It did not announce itself with drums. It came quietly like dawn, and settled gently in his heart. At first, no one counted the visits. The palace was large, and the king's steps were free. But slowly, patterns began to form, and eyes began to follow. As Obinna Okafor started walking toward Ngozi's hut more often than anywhere else. Sometimes it was in the evening, when the sun rested gently on the red earth. Sometimes it was late at night, when the palace was quiet and the drums had gone silent. He would enter her hut without announcement. No guards shouting his name. No servants rushing ahead. Just the soft sound of his sandals against the floor. Ngozi would rise quickly and kneel. "My king," she would say softly. And he would answer with a smile, "Rise, Ngozi. Sit with me." Inside that small hut, the king laughed. It surprised him at first. The sound escaped his chest without effort. He laughed at simple stories, at small mistakes, at memories from his youth. "I used to climb Iroko trees," he once said, shaking his head. "Can you imagine that?" Ngozi smiled. "Even kings were boys once," she replied. His laughter filled the room. Warm and free, the nights changed him. He slept deeply. Without waking to worry, his breathing slowed, his face softened. When he woke, his shoulders felt lighter. He stopped waking with headaches. He stopped pacing the palace before dawn. The crown felt less heavy. The servants noticed first. "The king smiles these days," one whispered while sweeping. "Yes," another replied. "He no longer shouts in the mornings." Guards began to relax. Even the drums sounded different, calmer. Then the wives noticed. The first wife counted. "He did not come last night," she said sharply. The second frowned. Again, the third burned more incense. The fourth watched in silence. Soon, the palace knew. The king was at peace, and peace, they understood, was dangerous. The first wife felt it deeply, even before anyone dared to say it aloud. She felt it in the way servants now paused before obeying her orders. She felt it in the way guards no longer bowed as quickly as they once did. She felt it in the nights when the king's footsteps did not turn toward her quarters. To her, these small changes were loud insults. "I am the senior wife," she reminded herself again and again. "I came first. I opened this palace." Yet every morning, she woke with a growing bitterness in her chest. Authority, which once rested naturally on her shoulders, now felt like sand slipping through her fingers. She watched from her window as the king walked past her compound, his steps calm, his face light. "He goes to her again," she whispered, her jaw tightening. One afternoon, she summoned her closest maid. "Lock the doors," she said quietly. "Tell no one." When the doors were shut, she spoke in a low voice. "Go and call the others. Tell them it is urgent." That night, when the moon was high and the palace slept, the senior wife gathered the other wives in her chamber. Lamps were dimmed. Voices were lowered. No laughter was allowed. "This palace is changing," she began, her voice sharp but controlled. "And it is not changing in our favor." The second wife frowned. "You mean Ngozi," she said plainly. "Yes," the senior wife replied. "Since when does a woman without power command the king's heart?" The third wife spoke softly. "The king is at peace with her. That peace is stealing our place," the senior wife snapped. "Seniority means nothing now. Influence is fading. If this continues, what will become of our sons?" Silence followed. Fear crept into the room. The fourth wife finally spoke. "What do you propose?" The senior wife leaned forward, her eyes burning. "We meet like this. We watch. We speak carefully. We do not allow a quiet woman to erase our authority." They nodded slowly. The meeting ended without agreement, but something dark had been born. That night, the senior wife lay awake, staring at the ceiling. "I was first," she whispered, "and I will not be forgotten." The meetings did not stop. What began as whispers in dark rooms soon became a quiet routine. The four wives, once divided by pride and rivalry, now sat together with a single emotion binding them. It was not friendship, it was fear. They met late at night, when the palace was asleep and even the guards yawned with boredom. Lamps were kept low, doors were shut firmly, every sound outside made them pause. Each woman watched the others closely, measuring trust with caution. The senior wife spoke first, as always. "We are losing ground," she said, her voice firm but trembling beneath the surface. "Look around you." The king's eyes no longer search for us. The second wife shook her head slowly. "It is that girl," she said bitterly. "She smiles, she listens, and suddenly she owns the king's peace." The third wife folded her hands, her voice barely above a whisper. "Peace is dangerous. When a man finds peace, he stops listening to noise." The fourth wife exhaled sharply. "And we have been nothing but noise," she admitted. Silence followed. Each woman thought of her son. Each imagined a future where the crown slipped away. Fear tightened their chests. The senior wife broke the silence. "If she rises," she said slowly, choosing her words, "we fall." The words hung in the air like a curse. The second wife nodded. "If she becomes more than she is now, our sons will be nothing." The third wife added, "The ancestors favor calm hearts." "That frightens me." The fourth wife clenched her fists. "Then we must act before calm becomes power." They did not smile. They did not celebrate unity. They simply agreed. That night, an alliance was formed. Not from love, not from respect, but from fear of a quiet woman who had done nothing, and yet threatened everything. The lies did not come like a storm. They came like a slow wind, gentle enough to be ignored, yet persistent enough to be felt. The four wives understood one thing clearly. If they spoke loudly, the king would hear anger. If they spoke together, he would smell conspiracy. So they whispered, one by one, at different times, with different faces, but always with the same poison. The senior wife chose the early morning, when the king sat alone in the courtyard, watching the dew fade from the red earth. She approached carefully and knelt. "My king," she said softly, "I have carried this palace before others arrived. I speak only because I fear for you." Ezobina did not look at her immediately. "Fear what?" he asked calmly. She sighed, as if weighed down by concern. "There are women who gain power not by noise, but by control. They shape a man's peace, so that he cannot breathe without them." The king turned sharply. "You speak of Ngozi." The senior wife lowered her head. "I speak of manipulation," she replied. Silence followed. Then the king said, firmly, "Peace is not manipulation. Ngozi does not pull me. I go willingly." The senior wife bowed and withdrew, her jaw tight with anger. The second wife tried another path. She came in the evening, when the king was relaxed, sharing palm wine with guests. After the others left, she leaned closer. "My king," she said with a soft laugh, "forgive my boldness. Have you noticed how Ngozi never disagrees with you?" "Yes," he replied. She smiled thinly. "That is how clever women rule." The king's face darkened. "Enough," he said. "Do not insult wisdom by calling it deceit." The third wife came with incense and low chants. She spoke of dreams, of spirits, of unseen warnings. Some people hide their intentions from even themselves, she whispered. As Obina stood up, "Do not dress jealousy in sacred words," he said. "Ngozi walks in truth. Each attempt failed, each lie fell flat, and each refusal sharpened their hatred." Outside the king's chambers, the wives gathered later that night. No lamps were lit, only moonlight showed their faces. "He will not listen," one said bitterly. "Then she must fall," another replied. Their whispers changed that night. They no longer sounded like warnings, they sounded like plans. That night, when the palace slept and the red earth cooled under the silver moon, Ngozi lay awake in her small hut. Her mind was quiet, yet her heart beat with unease. She did not know it then, but the spirits of the ancestors were stirring, their eyes upon her, their voices ready to speak. When sleep finally came, it was not gentle. She drifted into a dream where the air smelled of smoke and iron. The red earth stretched endlessly, but it was not the familiar courtyard of the palace. Shadows moved in the distance, figures of men and women she did not recognize. Yet they carried the weight of something ancient, something eternal. Then she saw the crown. It hovered in the air, impossibly large, impossibly heavy. The gold was bright, almost blinding, but it was streaked with red blood flowing slowly over its surface. And between the drops of blood, tears glistened, shining like tiny rivers. The crown wept as it turned in the air, casting a light that made the shadows tremble. Ngozi's chest tightened. She wanted to run, but her feet were frozen to the ground. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. She only stared, and the crown seemed to stare back, heavy with warning, heavy with fate. Then a voice spoke. It was not loud, it did not thunder, it was calm. Like the river that flows quietly but shapes the land with patience. "Your son," the voice said, "will rule." Ngozi trembled. "My son," she whispered, her hands clenching the ground beneath her. "Yes," the voice continued, "but pain will come first. The path to the crown is never easy. Blood will touch the throne. Tears will flood the heart of the kingdom. And only then will he sit in power, guided by your hand, tempered by sorrow, strengthened by endurance." She fell to her knees in the dream, tears running freely down her cheeks. "But why me?" she cried softly. "Why my son? Why this suffering?" The crown spun slowly above her, its tears and blood reflecting 1,000 images, palaces in flames, sons wailing, mothers crying, kingdoms torn by jealousy. "Because it is the way of destiny," the voice said, "because the blood of the past flows in his veins. Because only those who endure pain can carry the weight of a crown without breaking." Ngozi shivered. She wanted to run from the vision, yet the crown held her gaze. She wanted to wake, yet her body refused. The ancestors' presence pressed upon her, not with anger, but with solemn insistence. "Do not fear," the voice said again, softer this time. "Fear will come, but courage is the gift you carry. You will guide him. You will teach him. And when the time comes, the kingdom will know that the smallest voice often carries the heaviest truth." The crown rotated once more, slowly, dripping tears and blood in the dream. Ngozi bowed her head, understanding what she must do. Even in the dream, she felt the weight of choice. Even in the dream, she knew the road ahead was long, full of whispers, rivalry, and sorrow. And then she woke, sitting upright in the small hut. The moonlight touched her face. Her hands shook. Her heart beat rapidly. She did not speak. She did not move. But in the silence, she whispered to herself, "My son, I will protect you. Whatever comes, I will endure. Whatever comes, he will rise." Outside, the palace slept, The red earth glimmered under the moon, the ancestors' presence lingering, silent, watching, waiting. The night was heavy when Ngozi left the palace quietly. She wrapped herself in her simple wrapper and moved through the red earth paths, careful not to wake the gods or the sleeping servants. The wind whispered through the ancient Iroko trees, carrying the scent of earth and smoke. And she felt a strange pulse in her chest. Something unseen guided her steps. Her destination was a small, hidden hut on the outskirts of Umuago. It belonged to a Dibia, a man feared and respected across the villages. He knew the old ways, the spirits of the ancestors, and the secrets that no one dared speak aloud. Even the king had approached him before, and the Dibia had always trembled in his presence. But tonight, Ngozi's approach caused him to shake in ways he had never experienced. When she arrived, the Dibia's small hut was lit by the dim glow of palm oil lamps. Smoke curled lazily from burning herbs, filling the air with a pungent, sweet scent. The old man rose slowly as she entered. His eyes widened, and his hands shook. "Ngozi," he whispered, his voice breaking, What brings you here?" She knelt before him, her hands folded. "Great Dibia," she said softly, "forgive my boldness. I come to speak of what the ancestors have shown me, and what I cannot ignore." The Dibia's breathing quickened. "Speak," he said, his voice trembling. "Speak. And may the spirits protect you. You are not supposed to carry what you carry." Ngozi looked up at him, her eyes calm yet heavy with worry. "I have dreamed," she said. "The ancestors have shown me a crown dripping with blood and tears. They spoke of my son, that he will rule Umuagu, but only after great pain." The Dibia's hands flew to his mouth. His body shook, and he stepped back. "No," he muttered. "Impossible. The gods do not reveal such things lightly." You carry the destiny of Umuagu." "I do," she whispered. "But I beg you, do not speak of it. Do not tell anyone. Not even the king. Let it remain hidden until the time comes." The old man knelt beside her, his hands clasping hers. "Ngozi," he said, "the spirits do not tremble lightly. What they show is truth, and the weight. It is heavier than any crown, heavier than any palace. You must be strong." "I will be," she said firmly. "I have no choice. I will guide my son. I will endure the whispers, the hatred, and the fear. I will carry it all in silence." The Dibia looked at her, eyes wide, lips parted in disbelief. You are not afraid," Ngozi lowered her gaze. "Afraid," she admitted softly, "is a luxury I cannot afford. I have learned to walk with it quietly. It is the only way to protect what must be protected." For a long while, neither spoke. The only sound was the wind brushing through the trees outside, and the distant, faint drums of the sleeping kingdom. Finally, the Dibia nodded slowly, still trembling. "I will honor your request," he said. "No word will leave my lips. But remember, Ngozi, destiny is patient. It waits, and when it moves, it will shake everything." "I understand," she whispered. "And I am ready, whatever comes." She rose and left the hut as quietly as she had arrived. The Dibia fell to his knees, muttering prayers under his breath. Outside, the red earth glowed softly under the moon, the shadows of the Iroko trees long and silent. Ngozi walked back to the palace, her heart steady, her mind calm, though the weight of what she carried pressed upon her like the heaviest crown imaginable. And in the silence of the night, the destiny of Umuagu rested quietly on her shoulders, waiting for the day it would awaken. After that night with the Dibia, Ngozi carried a secret that weighed more heavily than any crown in Umuagu. The prophecy, the vision of blood, tears, and the destiny of her son was not something she could share. Not even with the king who trusted her, not even with those who slept closest to her. The knowledge burned quietly in her chest, a fire she could not let flare. She rose each morning and moved through the palace as if nothing had changed. Her steps were measured, her voice soft, her eyes calm. But beneath the calm, her mind never rested. She had to think of every word, every gesture, every look, one wrong smile, one careless question. And the secret could slip from her lips. Even with the king, she was careful. When he sat beside her in the evening, laughing at a story from his youth, she smiled. But the truth of the crown stayed buried. "You seem distracted tonight," as Obina said once. His brow furrowed. Ngozi lowered her eyes. "My king," she said softly, "the palace is always busy. I only wish to learn from your wisdom." He studied her, sensing nothing amiss. "Ngozi," he said, smiling, "you carry nothing but peace in your heart. That is why I rest beside you." Her throat tightened. "Peace." A word she no longer felt. Fear had replaced it. Fear of whispers, of shadows, of the future that only she could see. Fear of the 4 wives, who were already restless, who would stop at nothing to secure their place. Fear of the prophecy itself, with its promise of pain and blood. The palace felt different to her now. The walls that once seemed protective now loomed. The servants' footsteps sounded heavier. The whispers of the wind sharper. Even the king's laughter, which had once made her heart light, now reminded her that she must hide the truth at all costs. One evening, as she walked past the courtyard where the 4 wives met, she overheard a fragment of their conversation. "Have you noticed?" one hissed. "The king spends more time with her than with us. She smiles too easily," another replied. "Too calm. It is not natural. There is something hidden." Ngozi's fingers clenched slightly at her sides. They suspected nothing yet, but their eyes and words were already haunting. If they learned the prophecy, if even a hint reached the wrong ears, the consequences would be dire. She returned to her hut that night and knelt silently on the floor. "I cannot speak it," she whispered to the shadows. "I cannot tell him, I cannot tell anyone, not yet." Outside, the red earth glimmered under the moon. The palace was quiet. The wind moved through the iroko trees, whispering secrets she could not hear. But inside her, the prophecy pulsed like a living thing, heavy with warning, heavy with destiny, and so she carried it alone, alone with the weight of the crown she had never chosen, alone with the knowledge that her son's path to power would be steeped in blood and sorrow, alone with the fear that replaced peace. Every night, when the king slept beside her, she watched him breathe, grateful for the calm that he still found, and every night, she reminded herself that calm was a luxury she could not allow for herself. She had a secret to guard, a kingdom to protect, and a son's future to shape. The prophecy remained hidden, and the fear, quiet but relentless, became her closest companion. The palace of Umuagu became alive with the cries of newborn sons. One by one, the 4 senior wives bore children, each birth announced with drums, feasts, and the clatter of celebration. The walls of the palace vibrated with music and laughter. Yet beneath the songs and the bright colors, a quieter, darker current ran: rivalry, jealousy, ambition. When the first wife gave birth, the palace was filled with warriors and elders. Drums shook the red earth. "The heir has arrived," she declared proudly, holding her son to the sky. Servants and attendants bowed low, praising both mother and child. The second wife followed. Her son was wrapped in golden cloth, his tiny hands reaching for the world. See the strength of my family, she whispered to the courtiers, her smile perfect but sharp. See the future of Agu in his eyes. The third wife gave birth with incense burning on her. Spirits invoked. And prayers whispered. The gods have smiled upon us, she said softly, but her soft words carried steel. Do not forget whose wisdom guides the throne. The fourth wife's son arrived next, a child with bright eyes and a strong cry. My family has served this kingdom for generations, she said, and now it continues. Respect must be remembered. The celebrations were magnificent. Feasts spread across the courtyard. Red wine and palm flowed. Servants sang and danced. The king walked among them, proud, smiling, holding the children one by one, offering gifts, blessing each mother in turn. But even in the laughter, the rivalry never slept. When the first wife noticed the king linger near the second wife's chambers, her smile froze for a heartbeat. When the third wife received a compliment from an elder, the fourth tightened her lips, her hands curling on the edge of her wrapper. Each glance, each polite word, each soft laugh was a hidden challenge. Did you see how he looked at her child? The first wife whispered to the second in a rare moment alone. He is proud, but he does not remember who came first. The second wife's eyes narrowed. And yet he calls the third wise. He praises her prayers more than ours. Is this justice, or something else? The third wife, overhearing while pretending to tie her wrapper, spoke softly, almost to herself. Power does not come from birth alone. It comes from influence, and influence is being taken from us. Even the servants whispered in quiet corners. The king's heart is no longer fair, one said. The last wife, Ngozi, she walks calmly, but I hear the king smiles more when she is near. Ngozi herself remained silent. Her child had not yet come. And she moved through the palace with quiet hands, gentle words, and patient eyes. She watched the celebrations, the rivalry, the hidden daggers behind polite smiles. She did not speak. She did not compete. She only observed, learning, understanding. At night, when the palace slept, the king would visit her hut quietly. Even after the celebrations ended, he would hold her hands, feel her pulse, and forget the noise of the palace for a while. Ngozi, he said once, smiling softly, you bring calm to a house of fire. She only lowered her eyes. I wish to serve you, she whispered, and the children. That is enough. But in the hearts of the other four wives, the fire only grew hotter. Each birth, celebrated openly, had only hidden the depth of their rivalry. Each drum, each feast, each blessing, had been a mask. Behind the smiles and the polite bows, ambition sharpened like a knife, and jealousy stretched its long shadow across the palace walls. Even the king, proud and joyful, could not see the danger growing quietly around him. Even the laughter of the celebrations could not cover the whispers, the plotting, and the unspoken thought that echoed in the minds of four ambitious women. If she rises, we fall. The palace of Agu was alive with small footsteps, tiny hands, and the endless laughter of children. Each of the four senior wives took great pride in their sons. They dressed them in fine wrappers, taught them the ways of the court, and whispered into their ears the lessons they believed would make them worthy of the throne. The first wife held her son close one morning, as the red sun cast its golden light across the courtyard. Listen well, my son, she said, her voice firm, almost sharp. You are the firstborn of the palace. You carry the blood of warriors. Do not bow to anyone. Your word carries weight. Your pride is your shield. Remember that always. Her son looked up at her, eyes wide, trying to understand. But mother, He asked softly, "Should I not listen to others too?" The first wife's gaze hardened. "Only to learn what they can teach you, my son. Never let them think they are equal to you. You are above them. You are destined to lead." The second wife approached her own son with gifts in hand. "My son," she said, carefully placing a small carved elephant beside him, "you are wealthy and strong. You will inherit power and respect. Always know that you deserve what others strive for. Never beg. Never bend. The world must bow to you if you are clever enough." Her son played with the elephant, absorbing the lesson without question. "I will, mother," he said. "I will not forget." The third wife's approach was softer, yet firm in intent. She lit incense and guided her son through prayers. "Power is yours, my child," she whispered, "but it comes with superiority. You must know your worth above all others. Speak little, but let your presence command. You are meant to rise above the common man." The fourth wife's son learned with discipline, his mother never letting him waste a moment. "Do not lower your gaze," she instructed. "Do not listen to those who are beneath you. The palace is ours. The people are ours. You are entitled, my son. Never let anyone forget it." And so, the four sons grew with pride swelling in their hearts, with lessons of entitlement and superiority stitched into every word, every gesture, every glance. They walked the palace halls like kings already crowned, even though their crowns had not yet arrived. Meanwhile, Ngozi watched quietly. Her son, her only child, played with wooden blocks and tiny clay figures, his laughter soft and gentle. She did not shout at him. She did not push him forward. She did not demand that he rise above others. Instead, she whispered lessons that were quieter, deeper, and often invisible to those watching. "My son," she said one evening as they sat by the hearth, "listen to the world before you speak. Patience will guide you when anger tempts you. Respect every living thing, from the smallest servant to the tallest warrior. And sometimes, silence speaks louder than words. Remember this." Her son tilted his head. Curious, "But mother," he asked, "will silence make them listen?" Ngozi smiled softly. "It will," she replied. "When you wait, watch, and choose your words carefully, you will know more than those who speak too quickly. You will see what others hide, and your heart will never be deceived." She held his small hand gently. "Patience, my son. Respect, my son. Silence, my son. These are the tools of those who endure and succeed without breaking." The palace continued its rhythm, bright and loud with the four older sons, each taught to command and dominate. They argued over toys, over small privileges, over attention. Each boy's pride growing stronger every day. Their mothers whispered behind their backs, reinforcing the lessons of entitlement and superiority. Yet in the quiet corner of the courtyard, Ngozi's son learned differently. He watched first, he listened first, and he spoke carefully. He learned to wait before acting, to understand before reacting, to respect before judging. His laughter was soft, his movements measured, his eyes thoughtful. The king noticed this difference. One evening, he walked through the courtyard and saw all the boys gathered. The four older sons bickered, demanding attention, pushing and shoving as their mothers watched and whispered instructions in their ears. Then he saw Ngozi's son, sitting quietly, building a small clay palace with careful hands. Listening as she guided him, he knelt beside them. "Your sons are very different," he said quietly. To Ngozi, she smiled softly, brushing his hand over her son's hair. "Yes," she said, "the others learn to shout their place. My son learns to understand his." The king's eyes softened. There is wisdom in this, he said, perhaps greater than the loudest voice in the palace. Ngozi only nodded. She knew the truth of the prophecy. She knew that patience, respect, and silence would be her son's armor, even when the palace around him raged with pride, superiority, and entitlement. And so, the children grew under very different lessons, each mother shaping the future of Yumuagu in her own way, unaware that the quietest child, taught in silence and patience, was the one destined to endure the greatest storms. The palace of Yumuagu, though beautiful, was alive with a quiet tension as the children grew. The older sons had been taught to believe that power was theirs by right, that the throne awaited the firstborn, and that their word carried more weight than anyone else's. Among them, the king's first son carried this lesson most fiercely. He walked the halls with a tall, proud posture, his head held high, his eyes sharp and calculating. Every step he took seemed to claim the palace as his. One morning, as the sun spilled red and gold over the courtyard, the first son approached his younger brother, Ngozi's child, who sat quietly near the river, shaping small boats from reeds. The older boy smirked, his pride shining like polished ivory. "What are you doing here, little one?" he asked, his voice sharp and mocking. "Building boats. Do you think that will make you a king?" Ngozi's son looked up slowly, eyes calm. "I am learning, brother," he said softly. "I want to see the river before I sail upon it." The first son laughed, loud and harsh. "See the river? Foolish child. You have no claim to this palace. You have no right to even speak of power. The throne is mine, and one day you will bow before me, as all must." The younger boy said nothing. He simply returned to his reeds, folding them carefully, listening to the river, feeling its flow. His silence was patient, but the first son did not understand. To him, silence was weakness. "You think your calm makes you better," the first son taunted, leaning closer. "It makes you smaller. You will never lead. You will never command. You will never be more than a shadow in this house." The younger brother continued working quietly, his small hands steady. "Perhaps," he whispered, "but even shadows can stretch across the land when the sun rises." The first son froze for a heartbeat, but only laughed louder, thinking it a childish riddle. "Poetry and whispers will not make a king, little brother. Only strength, pride, and action. And I have all three." As the first son turned and walked away, he shouted over his shoulder, "Do not think I do not see you, trying to be clever in your silence. One day, you will learn that the world does not reward the quiet." Ngozi's son did not respond. He watched the older boy retreat, listening to the echo of his footsteps on the red earth. The river flowed gently beside him, carrying a quiet lesson that words alone could not teach. He understood that power was not in loudness or mockery, but in patience, in observation, and in learning when to strike and when to wait. Later that evening, the king came to visit his sons. He found the firstborn boasting of his deeds, raising his voice, and laughing loudly with the other older sons. "The throne is mine," he declared proudly. "I will rule this kingdom when the time comes. None can oppose me." The king looked at him carefully, seeing the pride, the ambition, and the arrogance that had been nurtured in him. Then he looked at Ngozi's son, sitting quietly with his small hands folded, listening, watching. The king did not smile, but a thought flickered in his eyes. He whispered softly to Ngozi later that night, "There is a difference between those who shout to be heard and those who sit quietly, waiting to understand. One day, you will see it, my queen." Ngozi only nodded. She knew her son would face mockery, ridicule, and challenges from every corner of the palace. She knew the firstborn's pride would strike first, and that his arrogance would blind him to the quiet power growing beside him. And so the seeds of rivalry were sown, not through open battle, but through words, mockery, and the quiet patience of a boy learning to see the world in ways others could not. The palace, alive with celebration and whispers, seemed unaware that the future was not yet decided. The first son believed the throne was his by right. He believed his mockery, his pride, and his loud voice would shape the kingdom. But his younger brother, guided by patience, respect, and silence, was learning the most powerful lessons of all. The red earth stretched beyond the palace walls. The river flowed endlessly, and in its gentle murmur, the prophecy whispered that patience and silence, though small, could one day overshadow pride and entitlement.